Tonight, I'm doing this episode by the seat of my pants. That means I'm actually wearing pants. In the Middle Ages, Baghdad was the largest city in the world and garnered a worldwide reputation as a center of learning. Now they're learning about protesting. A barrel of oil now costs over $100, but I know if I go to the gas station, I couldn't fill a barrel with a Franklin. The American military intelligence analyst accused of leaking secret government files to WikiLeaks claims he was left in a cell naked for 7 hours. I guess the American military said, "Your turn." Ladies, I'm using Old Spice scented body wash. Now I'm the host your host could smell like. This is World Takeover. From World Domination Headquarters in Iowa City, this is Ryan Kopf, World Takeover. Thank you. World. If you've been reading the news today, you probably haven't heard about any of the unrest in the Middle East. Even Twitter isn't covering it. After all, civil unrest in multiple Middle Eastern countries just can't stack up to Charlie Sheen and his two goddesses. Here's what's happening. Historic revolutions have been laid out in Egypt, Libya, and a country called Tunisia, which I had a hard time finding on a map. It all started in December 2010 in the small country of Tunisia, where high unemployment, food inflation, corruption, and poor living conditions led to a revolution that ousted 23-year president Zine El Abidine Valentinez Alcalena Zehuk Shushira Bobires Bombabelli Blue Stradivari Talentrent Pierre Andre Chart Baldos George Deutzel Kaiser Ben Ali III. That sparked a chain of protests across the Middle East. A popular uprising in Egypt began with a series of demonstrations, marches, acts of civil disobedience, and massive labor strikes. Starting January 25th, the day of revolt, nationwide protests began with tens of thousands of protesters gathering in capital city Cairo, Egypt. January 28th, President Hosni Mubarak asked the government to resign while protesters continued to call for Mubarak's personal resignation. By February 1st, President Mubarak stated that he would not run for another term for president. And then finally, as protests continued to get worse, February 10th, the president stated his powers would be transferred to the vice president, sparking even bigger protests that night until February 11th. The vice president announced Mubarak's resignation and that control of the government would be given to the Egyptian military, which had fortunately remained neutral throughout the ongoing revolution, preventing much bloodshed. No sphinxes were harmed in the making of this revolution. Now in Libya, rebels are still locked in fierce battles with pro-current regime forces, and protests have broken out that make the protests happening in America look timid. That's a real picture. If I remember correctly, one thing Mubarak was infamous for was illegally arresting people without first charging them with any crime. Coincidentally, Senate Republicans in Wisconsin just voted to issue arrest warrants for the 14 Democratic senators who have left the state to prevent a vote on a union-busting budget bill presented by Governor Scott Walker. However, Madison attorneys Lester Pines and Susan Crawford pointed out that the state constitution provides an absolute bar against legislators being arrested for non-criminal offenses. So let's try a different picture. There we go. So when tens of thousands of protesters gather in the Middle East, stuff gets done. 2 long-term presidents are out of power, and democracy may slowly come to these countries. But when tens of thousands of protesters show up in Madison, were they running amok in the streets? According to Fox News, absolutely.
How many are professional left-wingers and how many are just regular folks?
It's tough to tell. When you get to the weekend, you get a lot of out-of-towners. A lot of people are bussed in from not just Wisconsin, but a lot of surrounding states. I talked to someone who was from California who's sleeping in the Capitol throughout this process. So you've got a real mixed bag out here.
Now, if you look closely, everyone keeps saying that it can't be Wisconsin because there are no palm trees in Wisconsin. But I say it can't be Wisconsin because A, there's no snow on the ground, and B, there's a sincere lack of cheese. I'm pretty sure the protest looks more like this. Not only did Fox mislead viewers about the violence of the protest, but Campus Progress reports that it was by far the friendliest protest I've ever attended. Maybe they're just a little too friendly. Now, I would never consider using the word punchable to describe a living person, mostly because it looks like somebody got there first. Play the video.
I'm Scott Walker, and I took on the political machine in Milwaukee.
He's wearing boxing gloves. Last week, I reported on the great success of internet group and Robin Hood of the Internet, Anonymous, in their quickly taking down a security firm who targeted the group. Within hours, they gained access to the firm's website, deleted the firm's backup data, created a website to share over 70,000 stolen emails, and remotely wiped the iPad of the CEO who provoked them. He failed to realize that underneath those masks is just another mask. More recently, the Westboro Baptist Church decided it wanted to tango with Anonymous, quickly learning it takes two to tango. If you don't know much about them, Westboro Baptist Church is infamous for protesting outside of military funerals, claiming that God is killing soldiers in response to homosexuality in America. Anonymous supporters claim both a press release supposedly sent by Anonymous saying the church had crossed the line and the counter press release from Westboro saying, "Bring it," were authored from members within the church, or as I like to call them, Westbolonians. Anonymous responded with a press release saying, "We have more pressing matters to deal with, and we will keep your application on file." And it's true that lately Anonymous has been busy, with 10 operations going on right now, including Op Wisconsin against Union Busters, Op Egypt against revolutionaries, Op to assist revolutionaries, Op Soft to boycott David Cook's companies, and Op Get Charlie Sheen More Attention, which is actually code for something even worse. In the radio interview, Anonymous denied writing the original press release to Westboro Church and hacked into one Westboro website to post a message that boiled down to "Go away," with Anonymous stating, "The world, including Anonymous, disagrees with your hateful messages, but you have the right to voice them." Not long after being shut down by Anonymous and pro-Anonymous forces, Westbolonians were able to celebrate last week's 8-1 Supreme Court ruling that states that even outrageous, hurtful speech is protected by the First Amendment. I'm sure the church feels that having their speech called outrageous is pretty hurtful. The decision is just one of a long string of court decisions protecting speech made about public affairs and public issues, and free speech supporters, hint me, have lauded the decision and its emphasis on the importance of free speech to honest public debate. Ideas I strongly support. And now for World Takeover's Threat Watch. In this new segment, I'll look at whatever the latest threat is that could get in the way of my world takeover. Last week might have been Justin Bieber's hair. There were almost protests. This week's threat comes in the form of mobile phones viruses, now getting more sophisticated than security analysts have ever seen. One virus gave the hacker the power to steal personal data from an infected phone, launch websites and make internet connections, and even send out premium text messages. Around 50 or more such applications were allowed on Google's Android market, where hackers had taken other applications, copied their code, inserted virus code, and re-released them to the public. Many people would be concerned that this would allow hackers to steal even more data than just an individual's personal data, as most Android phones are integrated with Facebook and allow a person to access their friends' data via their contacts. At least they would be concerned, but by putting their data on Facebook, they clearly don't care who has it. Google's response was pretty quick, with some sources claiming they had pulled infected apps from the market within 3 minutes of them being reported. Some warriors are calling on Google to go even further by remotely disabling bad applications from users' phones. TechCrunch reporter Nicholas DeLeon pointed out the backlash that often happens when a company shows that it has and can use such an ability. Amazon used their ability to remotely delete copies of a Kindle book it ran into copyright issues with, but to their credit, they promised never to do that again. Having the ability to remotely disable phone applications is not something new, however. 2 years ago, Apple had gotten criticism for its ability to remotely disable any iPhone application they needed to, which has me confused because I'm pretty sure once you've bought an Apple product, you've already given them complete control. These worriers are concerned that people might not even realize that their copy of otherwise innocuous, steamy Windows is infected with malware. That is tonight's threat. And that brings us to tonight's best person in the world. Getting an honorable mention, CEO of UBS giant bank Oswald Grubold, who reportedly is foregoing his 2010 bonus after failing to increase the company's stock price at the end of the year. Such a generous and altruistic move, letting the bank's wealthy shareholders keep that money. And with a 7 or maybe 8 with stocks and benefits figure salary, he probably doesn't need it. Next, we've already got hacker from Anonymous who took down the Westboro Baptist Church's website during a live interview. He gets the rating of good. Then is Hiroshi Ishiguro, director of the Intelligent Robotics Laboratory at Osaka University in Japan. Hiroshi is the researcher concentrating on making robots as similar as possible to real human beings, first unveiling a female android in July 2005. Researchers from Aalborg University in Denmark expanded on the original Geminoid design, creating a slightly less complex but extremely realistic-looking humanoid robot. The robot has very realistic-looking flesh and even simulates breathing and involuntary muscular reactions. For starting the focus on this work, Hiroshi Ishiguro is better, bringing me one step closer to the robot army I need to rule the world. Finally, today's best person in the world, you'll never guess, Sarah Palin. Why? Because she's still crazy. And every poll has her losing to Obama in the 2012 election. I know who I'm rooting for. That's it for tonight's Ryan Kopf World Takeover. Search for us on YouTube for my important note, and join my henchman army at ryankopf.com to help me take over the world.